Well, there's all kinds of things happening in the world of the news today, and of course, we do know that war in the Ukraine is continuing to go on, and I'm sure that Sasha Stark will be coming in here and sharing more insight about that. And of course, we've got our special at 11 o'clock, and right now it's just me and Nick. We'll see who else pops in. I know that Chris called me and said that he will be out of his pocket for both today and Monday. And of course, Steve's been having a lot of work obligations, but he will be back on Monday and he's bringing a guest. I have to find out who that guest is and everything, but we're looking forward to that. But before we get to the Ukraine, Nick, I was seeing in all kinds of articles in the news, all kinds of shootings and other things going around the world and all of that. And apparently, Senate Republicans said on Thursday they will force a vote to try to nick President Biden's ghost gun rule, pushing a fight over gun laws onto the chamber's agenda. And of course, Republican Senator Ted Cruz said that he will introduce a resolution along with Senators James Lankford of Oklahoma, Mike Braun of Indiana, and Mike Lee of Utah to block the Justice Department regulation. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to try to overturn an administration rule with only a simple majority vote if it's within a certain time frame. Biden could still veto the resolution disapproving the rule, which would also need to pass the House. And one of the things that Langford said is this is another attempt by the Biden administration to strip law-abiding citizens of their Second Amendment rights instead of addressing the failed policies that have led to increased crime across the country. This action by the Biden administration is not going to solve rising crime rates, is what Langford said in a statement. My question to you, Nick, is this going to be another quagmire for Biden during these off-year elections, and can we just expect that the Democrats are going to get slaughtered in the off-year elections because of this, as well as other issues that are out there as well? Because I know a lot of people that definitely like to hold on to their guns and all of that. But then again, like I said, when I was scanning through the news items before we both jumped on, I saw a whole lot of shootings all over the country and all of that in various places. And, whether it was done by a ghost gun or whether it was done by another type of gun, who the heck knows? But I was just wondering, should we be trying to have gun control? What's going on here and all of that?
Well, it's stupid. I mean, obviously we should have some form of gun control, Mark. Licensing, insurance should be mandatory on all guns, and repeal the Second Amendment because it's kind of out of date. It's back in the 1700s. Of course, that roused the Republicans. Second Amendment. No. What you got to have is reasonable laws. And if these reasonable laws can't get passed, you got to get rid of the thing that's causing the cancer that's causing all the problem, which unfortunately is the Second Amendment. But my thinking is that you do license and you insure. In other words, just like you buy a car, when you buy a car, you have to have an auto license to drive the car. Exactly. Then what you must have insurance in case there's damage to the car. All right, now let's go take a look at the gun, okay? You have a license to possess the gun. In other words, you've got to pass a certain amount of background checks, and frankly, a certain amount of competency in handling the weapon. Then you also have to have insurance because the weapon may go off accidentally, which it did in my cousin's case where he blew the head off of the son of the sheriff's department. No. Okay, it was an accidental discharge. I mean, things like that happen, but the survivors have to clean up the mess. All right, now see those two things? Really logical, easy to install, and then you get all these people, gun control, I'm against gun control, and zero rational thinking whatsoever. So here you have what I call, because, if you ever work on math problems and calculus problems, or frankly, Mark, what we do at the network, some of these technical things where you got to move everything back and forth to get something to project through a computer, those are complicated stuff. This is not complicated. This is very easy to solve, or at least easy to improve. If you ever did what they call simplex matrix regression lines, this is a very easy thing to improve. Now, why do we have a problem? It's because human beings, low level of thinking, just don't want to grasp hold of the problem. And Congress uses it as a complete political weapon. But seriously, licensing, insuring right now, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't have to pass any test at all. They're in a background test to handle a weapon. A lot of people have no clue how to handle these. Mark, I own a whole arsenal of weapons. I had 30-30s, I had shotguns, I had 357s, I had 44 semi-automatics, I had 22s. I used to shoot them all the time. I invited people out to my place to shoot them, and I noticed none of them knew how to carry a gun.
Well,
They didn't grow up with them. They had no clue. So they wave them around going, dude, the thing's loaded. You don't wave it in somebody's face, a loaded semi-automatic 44. Okay, I mean, and this is what I'm saying about having them pass those background checks. Then what happens if it is an accidental discharge? There's no insurance on it to clean up the mess. And it could be an injury as well as a death. You don't necessarily, if you get hit by a gun, you don't necessarily have to die. You could be injured, which could be just as bad. But there's no insurance allowed to carry on that. So we have very sloppy procedures in this particular area. And if the Second Amendment stops it, get rid of it. I'm not a big believer in things that are written in the 1700s to protect people in the year 2000s. But I certainly would like to hear from our politicians. And I think next week we're going to have one of the Senate candidates from Ohio, Morgan Harper, is going to be on our the economic show with David M. Walker. Currently set up, and she seems to be a really bright lady. So I'll got to give her a plug.
Yeah, we have to give her a plug. I'm looking forward to seeing what she's got to say and everything. Speaking of plugs and everything, is another one of your favorite issues that you've talked about before and everything, which is definitely, there's a lot of people that are running around this country that are acting as if COVID is over. There's even been a couple of states that have totally lifted their the rules and all of that. I think Missouri is one of them. I think there might be another state that's out there as well. And we do know that this weekend is Easter weekend. And a lot of the faithful, in terms of the religious faithful, be that Christians or Muslims or the various other religions out there, because this is a significant time frame for the Muslims as well. This is around the time of, I believe it's Ramadan or something like that. But definitely more and more people are actually going into the services. So that was reading an article where a lot of people in the various states were saying that their congregations are coming back in full force. I mean, they're probably getting tested when they come in the doors, or making sure that they have vaccine cards and the things along that line. But definitely, I do think that this coming Sunday, we will see more church doors open with more of their congregations in those church doors. So my thought and my question to you is, are we jumping the gun too soon? Should people be rushing off to go get dressed in their Easter best? Because we do know folks love to get dressed in their Easter best and heading to these church services, be it in North Carolina, be it in California, be it in whatever part of the world that they might be going. Because this isn't just happening here in the United States, it's happening throughout the world. And so I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about the fact that I guess people have been tired of things going on and all of that? Some of their political leaders are saying, this is done and everything, or that there is no more severe spikes and all of that. So therefore, they are looking forward to opening their doors.
Well, I mean, I just tracked the CDC, which I can show you right here. Notice the graph going straight down. Okay, this is a really great graph, and it went so far straight down at zero yesterday. In other words, there were no COVID deaths. So if you're looking at, it's just like looking at stock, you're looking at the history of what's going on. And markets taken a decided downturn with no deaths in the United States yesterday. That's pretty good. Now the average is like 23, but that's pretty small. So the data that you're getting is actually, yes, in the United States, it's decreasing very rapidly. Will it be over with? You don't know. What you want to do is pull more data tracks. In other words, you want to see some more of these zeros. Remember, we had this under control for a while that went out of control in December. Now I think it's back in control. When you're my age, you do look at getting that second booster.
Yeah.
So the thing is, because it does wear off, and when you're younger, you may not be susceptible anymore. In other words, how long are we going to see this zero track? I mean, I like seeing zero, because then I think, well, I'll start traveling again, which I am in May. So COVID, is it over with? We'll talk more next week about it. The next Friday, we're still seeing zero, Mark, then you can say that this is pretty well contained right now. Now, here's the problem internationally. Shanghai got closed down because they had 25,000 people that were tested positive from COVID. And China's worried like crazy, and it's causing big economic turmoil over there because of the COVID-19. And these new variants we're still not sure about. But it does show the vaccine has been working, and it also shows the mask policy has been working. I think the policies that were in place by the CDC were reasonable. I think we had a whole element of people in the United States who were very unreasonable in terms of following directions, but I don't think they could follow direction to save their lives, you know. So in other words, if you said, well, they couldn't because a lot of them died, Mark. I mean, you
Yeah.
know,
No,
so
that's a good question.
really weird.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in that. There's been a lot of talk even on this network because people sometimes tease him and everything about the state of being and whether President Biden is, definitely has enough knowledge and enough ability because there's all that thing about age and everything to actually do the job and whether he'll be able to do the job throughout the 4 years and all of that. Well, guess what? There's another person that has been fished back on that as well, because definitely there is a long-time liberal activist in my mind and everything that is pushing back on news reports about her age and capacity to fill the job responsibility of the Senate. So the San Francisco Chronicle has reported that 4 senators, including 3 Democrats and 1 Democratic House member, have said that Dianne Feinstein's member was rapidly deteriorated, and it appears that she could no longer fulfill her job duties without her staff. 3 former Feinstein staffers have made similar claims. None of them have agreed to be identified, but this story comes after 2 years of chatter on Capitol Hill about Feinstein's mental capacity to do her job. And Feinstein is 88, so she's up there in age, just like our president is as well. And she said in the statement that the real question is whether I'm still an effective representative for 40 million Californians, and the record shows that I am. She said she focused much of last year on husband Richard Blum's illness and death. I have remained committed to achieving results, and I put my record up against anyone. So what do you think when there are some of these politicians, and we do know that politicians can stay in office for a long time, that might be having issues of whether they are able to actually do the job, because as you get older, some of your memory does kind of fade away, and that could impact your ability to be a leader and all of that. So, like I said, I know that Feinstein has been a long-time liberal activist and all of that, but like I said, we've even had guests on this show as well as some of our own panelists that have talked about President Biden's mental capabilities as well. So, what are your thoughts when folks are going after folks' mental capabilities?
It's fair game, Mark. And if you notice, all the statements you read were what we would call in law self-serving statements. They
Right.
weren't by third parties. They were by Dianne Feinstein herself. Well, I'm okay. 40 million people love me. Blah 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 blah. Okay, but that's not the reality. And this what she is. Same with Nancy Pelosi, and same with Joe Biden. Is a good argument for term limits or even age limits. A lot of the places that you work in, there are mandatory retirement ages. For example, flying an airplane as an airplane pilot, once you hit 65, you're retired. And there's a good reason for that. Well, like it or not, as you get older, your competency goes down. I mean, it's something even in chess, the world I played in for years. Mark, I don't play hardcore tournament chess, but a lot of the top players don't either. Once they hit the age 50, they quit because they notice that they can't maintain the same level of intensity, thinking, et cetera. It's just the way it is. Your cognitive skills decline. What I noticed, now this is what they call empirical evidence. In other words, anecdotal empirical evidence. Working in the estate planning field for 17 years, we used to have a policy that we would not work with people over age 80. And the reason why, almost all, not all, but almost all, uniformly have cognitive decline when they hit age 80. It's just a problem. I saw it in my own family. You can go anywhere and you can see that. In the 70s, when they're in their 70s, they tend to do okay. When they hit around age 80, man, we came to the conclusion they just couldn't make decisions. Now we have a problem here. You just told me Dianne Feinstein is 88. Now, not to mention she might be sharp enough to have her facilities, but she ain't as good as she used to be. I'm sorry. And we also have a problem that we don't allow young people to come in and take their place. I don't care how good they are. In other words, younger people need jobs, baby, and they can't be occupied by all these senior people that are out there that hog them. So for good reasons, we should have a policy in this country that over age 80, you're out of there. Okay, no matter what, you're just retired. Get rid of them and get young people an opportunity to serve. So here's my criticism, Dianne Feinstein. I'm going to beat her up a little bit now that she's not here, and she probably never come on our show anyway, so I don't really care. Okay, she is depriving young people the opportunity to serve because she's hogging the political limelight by herself. So she is very selfish. She is self-centered. She makes self-serving comments, and she's bad for our country. I don't care what party she is. She should go. Goodbye, Dianne Feinstein. Have a good retirement wherever you are. And the thing is, unfortunately, same with Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe is going to be basically too old in my book to serve out his term. At age 80, he should retire. Now, that means Kamala Harris comes president. That's fine. The thing is, he needs to say, hey, look, it's 80. I made 80. Time for younger people to take over and let the transition take place. So now, will he do it? Probably not, because power-hungry people tend to eat
Well,
more power.
he's probably not going to do it when the Republicans have said that they don't want to have a debate, and a lot of people love debates and all of that. And actually, Biden's sister has come out in his defense and everything, because President Joe Biden's sister and longtime campaign manager Valerie Biden Owens appeared Thursday on one of these other talk shows, and she spoke about the Republican National Committee unanimously voting earlier in the day to no longer take part in presidential debates in their current form, even going so far as to require candidates to sign a pledge not to do so. And apparently, definitely, former President Trump has said something similar about the debates. And what Owen says, if you don't want to debate, it's a sign that you're scared to debate. So I think it says it all in their walking away. So apparently she's saying that, hey, wait a minute, y'all say that y'all can, that he's not that good and that he's not able to speak that well. But it says that you might be afraid and all of that. And she does take another crack at them, saying, remember Joe, when he was a little kid, from the time he was a little kid, he stuttered terribly. He couldn't string more than 3 or 4 words together at a time. So he knows what it's like to be bullied and to be shunned and to be put in your place. And he said, I am not walking away because of fear. Apparently there's might be some trash talking going on as well. We do know sports is around the corner with the NBA's finals and some other finals coming up like hockey. So sounds like some trash talking going on.
And probably so. And see, the debate format is not professional anyway. I mean, I did watch a lot of those debates that took place, and I also participated in professional debates at the high school level. They did better, and then the collegiate level, they actually are very well managed and orchestrated. Here, we don't really have debates, so I can't blame the Republicans for walking away, but they obviously didn't state their case very well. It's not that they're walking away. They don't like the current format. Here's the current format, Mark. Some clown commentator, from CNN or from CBS or NBC, jumps into the seat, and now this clown commentator, for some reason, is a professional debate manager. Well, they aren't. You saw what happened with one of the Trump debates, where they allowed the people to run away screaming and hollering at each other. They didn't even what they call control the room. Most judges that I've been in front of know how to control their courtrooms. The clown commentators did not, but this is how they're chosen, because they go to their favorite commentator who's on CBS or NBC and make them all of a sudden a debate manager. Well, that's not what they should do. They should bring in professional debate managers. A lot of them are judges, ex-judges, people that work in the NFL, which is the National Forensic League, who moderate the debate on a professional manner and set the guidelines and standards accordingly. So those are not debates. You've never seen a debate. What you see is political grandstanding from both parties. So, it doesn't need to be reformed. The answer is yes. Did the Republican Party present their case very well? Once again, no. What they should have done is said, we would like this to be a professional debate by both parties and have professional moderators, such as the ex-judges that sit on the bench that know how to control debates, and have the format like a real debate. Even in law school, they have debates that go all the way up into national competition, and they're professionally done. So I can't blame the Republicans from walking away. I do think that, once again, they stated their case very poorly, and What can I tell you? In terms of Joe Biden, when you hit age 80, please retire.
Retire. Speaking of poor cases and everything, we know that we oftentimes talk about poverty around the world, and yes, poverty around the world is a significant issue and everything. But guess what? Then this was a recent report and everything, and they're asking a question about it and everything. And I'm thinking part of it is because of the pandemic, but they're saying, what if nearly 4 million, and I did say 4 million, American children were plunged into poverty practically overnight? Surely Americans would notice and raise their voices in a righteous anger over the heartless decision that caused this sorry state of affairs. Actually, the answer is no, because over the past few months ago, this exact scenario has played out and no one appears to care. So
Wow, really?
last year, Democrats in Congress, with the strong backing of the Biden administration, expanded and increased the child tax uh, care credit as part of the American Recovery Act and all of that. But they're saying, where is the policy move that has such a dramatic and laudatory effect for American children? The United States has long had one of the highest child poverty rates in the developed world. But with the expanded child tax credit, these numbers finally began to move in the right direction. Almost immediately, monthly child poverty in America was slashed by 30%. So too was child hunger, as more than 2 million kids no longer had to worry about not having enough food to eat. And like I said, it was a lifesaver for American families, 90% of whom reported they spent the money on basic necessities like food, clothing, and education. So that sounds like a great concept, but now that that's gone away, and all of that, guess what? Those 27 million children are going in the opposite direction. And there have been a lot of statistics. I was looking at some other statistics as well that, yes, there are a whole lot of folks in right here in the United States that are in poverty and all of that, which actually shocked me and everything. But it says the top 3 states, that these 8 states have the highest rate of food security across the U.S. And guess what? Quite a few of them are in the South. They include Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, New Mexico, Arkansas, Kentucky. This one surprises me: Maine and
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
Maine is not a very wealthy state, Mark. And when you're talking about poverty, this is something very important that we've seen happen in the United States over the last 30 years. It's the wealth disparity that's almost sickening in the U.S. And what I'm saying is this: not only have we created a group of poor people, we also created this, which people don't want to admit, but it's a bad statistic. And as I keep looking at the statistic, it bothers me because I can only talk to so many people about my business. Okay, here it is. There it is. This is the thing you don't want to see. 5% of our population own 70% of all the assets in the United States. All
Yep.
right. And so what has happened, and this is a progression that's taken over 30 years to achieve, there's more and more a concentration of wealth among a very few amount of people. And at the same time, we've also grown another group, a group of people that are poor. So what we've seen is this: the middle class is split apart. You're either going to be in the 5% that are going to own 70% of the assets, or you're going to fall into poverty. And most people will unfortunately fall into poverty. And we're seeing that also with what's going on in inflation right now. Part of the reason people are falling into poverty is inflation hits and hurts the lower classes. In other words, the working people. In other words, people that they're spending a certain amount of money on food and gasoline. By the way, the stat I saw, the biggest increase of what do they call it? Inflation was actually gasoline prices.
No, and some of these statistics are very startling. There's an organization called Children International. They do talk about the world situation as well, but they say that one child in 6 lives in poverty compared to 1 in 8 adults. That's 11.9 million impoverished children in the U.S. And this was from a couple of years ago, so this figure might actually be up and everything. And the poverty line for a family of 4 is about 26,000, half the income needed for basic financial security and all of that. And they were talking about how food insecurity has lasting effects like low reading and math scores and more physical and mental health problems. And in 2017, 40 million people were struggling with hunger in the United States. So that was before the pandemic. So that figure could actually be up now and all of that. So definitely those are just some things that I'm going like, wait a minute, we're the westernized nation. We're one of the top Western nations, if not the top one. And we're having all of these issues and everything. That just sounds downright shameful, for lack of a better word, and all of that.
Yeah, it actually is. And the thing is, the real problem is a lot of these people, the 40 million, don't have a big voice.
Right.
And because we realize that when we go back to that 5%, who I do spend my time working with because they can afford to pay my bills. But the thing is, they have a big voice
Mm-hmm.
because they have the money to contribute to Congress. They have the money to food insecurity is not an issue for them. And if you pick up the Wall Street Journal every Friday, which I do, you read the mansion section, which is disgusting. How many people are spending millions, tens of millions on these big mega mansions? In other words, they hit the lottery, their businesses did well, and now all of a sudden, do they care about, well, let's go to these people, 40 million? Well, sure they do. They'll say, well, we care about them as they write their $30 million check for their huge house in Malibu, California. Okay, and that's that's the realities of it, and part of it deals with all the way back. And this is what let's see, my friend Joe Stiglitz said. Now he's up in years, so I can't get him on the show, but I do have his book, Price of Inequality. It's a good book. But what he showed is that since we used to have a marginal tax rate that was high as 90% during the Eisenhower administration. Now, why did they do that? So they would level the playing field. Now, you had to make over $1 million to get to that 90% level. So not everybody paid 90%. But once you made $1 million, you pay 90% in federal income. Okay. Now, with that, we had a leveling of the middle class because more of the funds were pushed down, or as people started making more than $1 million, they'd turn their business over to someone else who could make the $1 million because they didn't care. They already had enough. All right. Since then, what Reagan did is compress those marginal taxes down to 28%. Okay, you do that for 30 years, Mark, you end up with the situation we're looking at right now. Poverty for 40 million people, and 5% own 70%. And that's the reality of it. I mean, and it's our tax system, it's our economic system, and the thing is, but see, the 5% are pretty smart. What they do is they encourage their kids to get into the industries of the future, the internet. They get into cryptocurrency, blockchain, Bitcoin. They're going into the metaverse. We're going to do a whole show on the metaverse coming up Monday. In other words, go into places where you can scale what you're doing and make zillions of dollars. All right. So you'll stay in that 5% owning 70%. Now, here's what the 40 million people do. They're stuck with this, best thing they're going to do is, well, work at Walmart or work in Burger King or something like that. In other words, get your high school diploma and go work at the Burger King. So unfortunately, it creates this endless cycle of poverty in the United States, and we didn't have the support system for them. When you just gave me the numbers, 26,000 a year being poverty, that means $13 an hour, which means you have to make 15 just to be above poverty. And we don't have a $15 minimum wage. Our minimum wage is still, Mark, it's still $7.25 an hour on the federal level. Everything else is indexed for inflation. Okay, and when I'm saying this, and the wealthy people know this, they're exempt from federal estate taxes up to, you'll love this number, 11 million, because anybody under 11 million, relatively poor in their minds. Then 11 million, you start paying it, but that 11 million is actually indexed for inflation, so it keeps going up, Mark. The 11 million keeps going up. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. It's never been indexed for inflation. So what happens? The poor people are continually stuck down there. It's just, and I'm saying, that's been our tax and economic policy in this country for 30 years now. And this is one reason we see it. It's really, it jolts the mind.
It just joggles the mind. Speaking of joggling the mind, apparently a major actor, and actually two major actors, have been dealing with sexual abuse claims and all of that. And one of them has pleaded guilty to a charge that I didn't even know was a charge that was out there and everything. But apparently, Cuba Gooding Jr. has pleaded guilty to what they are saying is forcible touching of women at
Yeah.
New York City nightclub. So he has pleaded guilty into that long-running groping case, and the Jerry Maguire star was accused of violating three different women at three different Manhattan nightclubs in 2018 and 2019. I do have a question for you as a lawyer. How do you even get away with that kind of charge if it was at a nightclub? Because it's been a minute because of this whole COVID thing that I've been to a nightclub. I have gone to, of course, back to the Hayti Center, and I've gone maybe to a bar or two, but it's been a minute since I've been to an actual nightclub. But the times I remember going to a nightclub, and particularly if it was a popular nightclub, they're crowded. So aren't you going to bump into people and possibly be doing those kind of acts anyway because they're crowded? So I just wanted to get sounds to me like that would be a hard case to find somebody guilty of, but apparently they got him on a plea bargaining agreement
Yeah.
and everything, and he did agree that he did that. But I'm sitting there like it wasn't like some of these past cases where people were lured into rooms. We're talking about at a nightclub, and I'm imagining that it was a popular nightclub, so I'm thinking it was crowded and all of that. But I could be wrong in that, and then I'm also really having a hard time. But I do want to hear your answer. Getting over somebody that I've always thought of being as very short, but apparently that's what I always knew him of. But one of his cohorts was saying that she was harassed by the comedian, that being Gary Coleman. But Molly Shannon has come out and said that she was sexually harassed regularly by the comedian and different stroke star Gary Coleman and all of that. So she'd been out on the circuit saying that that was going on as well. But definitely coming back to the first one, wouldn't it be hard to prove that in a nightclub?
Well, apparently the thing is, this is where they probably drilled down on the facts. There were probably some things happening that he couldn't get away from, and so he got stuck on the facts. And so what he did is he plea bargained his way out, which you can't blame him for doing. Oh, Sasha has arrived.
Sasha's arrived. I was waiting for Sasha to arrive so we can get to the what's going on in Russia.
What's going on in Russia? Because the Ukraine. Last thing I heard, Sasha, is they blew up a ship, and they said then the Ukrainians said, no, we really didn't do that. What you did is converted their ship into a submarine. So. Sitting at the bottom of the ocean. So, Sasha, what's the update on? I know you're doing your show later on today, but for the World Edition, what's the update on what's going on in the Ukraine?
The update is that Ukraine very soon will get long-range missiles. They can hit their target on the distance of 250 kilometers.
Wow.
From northeastern part of Ukraine to Moscow, only 240 kilometers. So there could be some interesting developments in this.
Wow. Isn't that a little bit dangerous? Because if they have long-range missiles and they really get mad, what stops them from launching it?
Russians?
No, the Ukrainians are saying are getting long-range missiles, right?
Yeah, they're getting there, and as soon as they will get there, it's just a matter of time until they will start really do some damage to the Russian territories. It's about time.
That's what I'm saying. What would stop them if they get them from targeting Moscow and sending? In other words, if the Russians do something inappropriate in eastern Ukraine or where
it doesn't matter what Russia, as long as Russians are on their territory, they don't have to do anything. Just by the fact of staying on the Ukrainian territory, they already committed crime and they have to be punished by that, even if they will not kill any more people. But just the mere fact that they are there, they have to be punished severely. And that's what's going to happen very soon.
Yeah, but how would Moscow respond to Ukraine?
Nobody cares. No one cares. I don't think that the nuclear arms and missiles that they're ready to fly, and they will fly, and they will be launched. And even if they will launch, whether they will hit the targets or they will go just to ocean, nobody knows. And I don't believe in this Russian triad, the submarines, and all that stuff. It's all nothing but propaganda.
Yeah, but Russia, Moscow has a population of about 20 million people. It's one of the biggest cities, if not the biggest in Europe. Um,
It will become smaller city.
it
That,
becomes smaller. So my question, would Zelensky really send a missile into Moscow? That's my question, I guess. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it will be done in next maximum 2 weeks, maybe sooner.
Really? Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, will he do like this? I'm targeting Russian, how you say, military bases.
Russian military bases.
Yeah, because they have them around Moscow.
I don't think they have any bases anymore. I think they
Well,
already.
obviously they're having a problem with their army, but there are military bases around Russia. Will they use these things to target military bases?
I think it's a waste of time. And each missile is very expensive.
Sure.
So why would you spend your missile to attack empty army barracks? Because there is no one there anymore. They will be sent to Ukraine. Very few will return. So this military bases, Russian, they're good for nothing.
Well, will they target the Kremlin? I guess that because we don't do the military base, why wouldn't they hit the Kremlin?
Kremlin is a viable target for sure.
Right. And then you
Yeah.
get rid of all the roaches that are causing all the trouble.
Well, you see, the Russians have to start feeling the taste of their own medicine. See
Yeah.
what they were trying to do with Ukrainian cities like Kharkiv, Kiev, Mariupol, and others. They have to start to feel, the Russian citizens have to start to feel what Ukrainian people had to go through in the last month and a half. Once
Right.
that will happen, then maybe only then some peaceful negotiations, serious negotiations. Russians, they avoid negotiations right now because they are sure they have an upper hand. They will defeat Ukraine easily. But Ukraine has to get on even with Russia and have amass the same means of destructing Russian civilian targets, not military. They don't need military targets, civilian targets. That will get a great fear of Russian people. They will start looking into something that, look, we had a fantastic life in the last 15, 20 years. Everything was fine. Now what's happening? There is a war. Now our people are being bombed and killed. There is a huge sanctions from the West. Our living standard of living is deteriorating. Something is wrong. Why? Why is it happening? Maybe Putin is, after all, is not God. Maybe he miscalculated something. Okay, so how do we get out of this horrible situation? To arrest Putin, very simple.
Or will it have the opposite effect, saying that the people say, well, look, Putin was right. The Ukrainians are a bunch of Nazis and they attack civilian targets, which is one reason I said, well, rather than attack the civilian targets, attack the military targets, or if you want to blow up all the oligarchs, hit the Kremlin, and then you got rid of all the stupid politicians.
No,
And
of course,
Russia
hit
will
the
make a
Kremlin
decision.
is absolutely the right strategy. Why not hit the Kremlin and, okay, so they will have to hire back Italian architects to rebuild the Kremlin. And
Right.
that was going to happen. That's
Yeah,
it.
well, that's what I'm saying. In other words, the politicians need to, and the oligarchs need to be threatened because right now
Speaking of
they're not
being
threatened.
threatened and everything, there are a lot of Western companies that have been, in my mind, rightfully pulling out and all of that, including McDonald's, Goldman Sachs, and PayPal and all of that. But is there like a serious chocolate addiction in Russia or something? Because apparently Nestle doesn't want to pull out, and I know that that's a Swiss company, but they have said that they are not pulling out, and some of their people have actually quit, including a lot of employees over there in the Ukraine. Not having lived in that part of the world, I'm just sitting there going like, why would Nestle not pull out? Is there like a big chocolate amount of folks buying stuff over there in Russia that I'm not aware of that want a bunch of Kit Kats? I'm trying to figure out why Nestle would not be joining some of their other American compatriots.
Uh, so are people addicted to chocolate over there, Sasha, in Russia?
They like chocolate probably more than in other countries. I could confirm that. But this is a reason to enter a Russian market. By all means, it's not nearly as desirable as any European country, whether it's France, Germany, UK, just anything. However, the belief was that because it's a country of 140 million people, the market will expand because of the uh, proliferation of a middle class, which will consume all the goods from Europe, from the United States. But right now, we are going through deterioration of middle class. Actually, the poverty in Russia is still horrible, just like always. But the middle class is now getting closer and closer to poverty line. So there's no market to speak of. Yeah, there are 140 million people, but there is no market. And furthermore, all the dreams about developing market at some point, they're all deteriorating. And
But there is a market. There is a market to supply weapons to the Ukraine, so that seems to be a good market for the Ukraine. Because that was one of the other articles that I said, because they were saying that hiding in plain sight is a Soviet area air air defense system arriving in the Ukraine. So apparently, a certain mayor of Dobra was driving back to his village near the Ukrainian border, and he had to stop to let a train pass, and assumed he wouldn't have to wait long. But as the train kept going and going, that's when he realized that it was carrying a lot of weapons that were coming from the west and all of that. And it apparently carried an air defense system made up of 48 surface-to-air missiles, 4 launchers, and radars to guide the rockets to their targets, which in Ukraine means Russian warplanes and missiles. And it definitely looks like the West is sending a lot of weapons over in that regard and all of that. So are you seeing enough weapons coming to the Ukraine from the U.S. and other NATO countries, or would you like to see an increase in these weapons? Because I do know that Zelensky has definitely asked for a no-fly zone, and he's definitely asked for other things to go on. So just as one that is very much personally concerned with this war and everything, what is your thoughts as to how we are doing in terms of supplying weapons, or would you like to see more supplies?
thank you for your question, Mark. No credible analyst will tell you exactly how many weapons Ukraine is getting from the West. This is all clandestine operation. They don't talk much about it. It's happening as we know, as we speak, but the exact size of that help is quite difficult to discuss at this point. But all evidence is that more and more ammunition is coming. And remember, the war cannot be won by ammunition. It's won by people. So combination of Ukrainian people using the modern Western ammunition creates probably the strongest army in Europe for sure, and maybe second sort in the world.
Yeah. Well, since Russia withdrew from Kiev, basically regrouping, that doesn't that work in Ukraine's favor because that gives the West more time to send over weapons
Absolutely.
and toys. So I see that it's going to get worse for Russia, not better, because they're going to be heavily armed if they decide they want to push in Donbass and they want to push anywhere else. In other words, if they change and they go back on the offensive, it's going to be worse for them. This situation can get better for them. Is it, Sasha? It looks like
Well,
because
the
they're going
thing
to have a
is,
lot of our toys.
I mean, the best strategy for Putin would be, not maybe for Putin, for Russia, would be to take remaining troops, whoever is alive still in Ukraine, get them out of there. Forget about it. Just take still reasonable losses, cut them, cut your losses and run. That's all what Russia have to do. But this is not very good deal for Putin because Putin promised to denationalize Ukraine and demilitarize Ukraine and change government and do so many wonderful things. He haven't delivered even one. So he's a liar, among other things.
Well,
He-
he lied from day one when he
Well,
put
he
all
lied. Yeah, he lied from day
he put
one.
all the troops around the Ukraine and said, "Oh, we're not going to attack," and then he attacked. So we know he's a liar.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
well, and
it's
that was actually my question because the place that I was referring to was actually Slovakia and everything, and that's where some of the weapons are coming from, and
yes, they are.
along those lines. And then there's the question is, does Slovakia need to worry that they might become a target as well, or is Ukraine going to do enough of a job that Slovakia will be safe, even though it's a
I'll ask you
smaller
a simple question. Didn't America send, United States send javelins to Ukraine?
Yeah, we did.
So
Mhm.
then U.S. will be a target.
We sent javelins and stingers.
Right. So United States, technically speaking, is a target of Russian nuclear attack, right?
Right.
Yeah, I got that, but I'm talking about the
What are you
smaller
going to do
country of
about that?
Slovakia. Is it all? It would be. Is there any fear that they will go from Ukraine to Slovakia? Because apparently Slovakia is where a lot of this military aid is coming from, including aid not just from the United States, but the Czech Republic, Australia, and other countries that are out there as well. So I'm just
Mark,
wondering.
is does Slovakia has a border with Russia?
No,
No.
No. Okay.
they have to go through Poland.
To Poland or through Ukraine? So
Yeah, or
first
through
to
Ukraine.
attack
And they can't even get through
Slovakia,
Ukraine. So what can they do?
you have to first have a control of Ukrainian territory. So for months, well, 50, so today is 51st day. For 51 days, they haven't, uh, except Kherson, they haven't got any major city in Ukraine so far. So
Yeah.
what makes you so confident that they will prevail and they will, from Ukraine, will attack Slovakia?
No,
Now,
no, I hear
besides,
you. No,
unlike
I hear you.
Ukraine, Slovakia is a member of NATO. So there are some consequences possible
Right.
as well. And then
Hey,
what do we do about it?
hey, Nick. Apparently, Slovakia has actually also come back with one of your favorite topics as well, which is fake news, because it is definitely one of the things that the defense ministry in Moscow had claimed on this past Sunday that Russia had already destroyed the Slovak missile system when sea launched crystal cruise missiles hit a hangar near the eastern Ukrainian city of Denibro. And Nad, who is the Slavic defense minister, dismissed this as quote unquote fake news, apparently aimed at saving Russia's face and calming the nerves of Russian pilots sent on missions to bomb Ukraine. And Nad said he had spoken with the Ukraine defense minister on Monday and had been assured that this system is working and is working well and was not in Denibro.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that Putin is continually. Remember, they're doing a lot of media distortions over there,
Yeah,
and
so
I get this through the Chinese that how every time we talk about this, they keep saying, "Well, the United States invaded Vietnam. The United States invaded Iraq. The United States invaded Afghanistan. So why can't Russia invade Ukraine?" So, Sasha, what are your thoughts about that? Those are my friends from Understanding China.
I'll tell you what. There are a lot of talk in conservative Republican-dominated media about that the best strategy for U.S. is make peace with Putin, because what is Ukraine after all? I mean, it's just kind of a secondary rated power. It's nothing, but Putin is all important. It's Russia. It's so cool, and you have to make a peace with Russia one way or another. The problem with this thought is that in all history, Russia is a contentious country which nothing but war, lies, death. It brings nothing to the world. It's a backward country where majority of population is very poor and is getting even poorer. And a such country with a liar on the top of it could be indeed very prone to use nuclear arms simply because there is nothing else they can do. Now, so ideal situation that the country which was always backward, very hostile to all world, never had a renaissance. Today's population of Russia has nothing to do with the Tchaikovsky culture or Pushkin or Dostoevsky or anything else. It's a different genetic material today. what is in Russia. So, as I always said, that uh, George Bush Sr. is by far the worst president of United States, because the Soviet Union collapsed. He could get finally Russia out of nuclear arms, and the world today would be beautiful. It would be a safe place for everybody. He just failed to do so because of his um, lack of imagination, lack of vision of any kind. He failed, and now all world is fate. The fate is that there is a reasonable chance that Putin will use nuclear arms. The only hope is that the missiles will not fly, the bombs will not explode, and everything will go as usual. Things in Russia, they don't work, they cannot do anything, they cannot produce anything except this oil and gas.
So I take it you don't fly Aeroflot when you go to Russia, Russian airline.
No, he's
Airflow
not. He's not a big fan
no
of
longer
Russia.
an option, I guess.
Well, I mean, the real problem with Aeroflot, I would not go on it because of I'm not sure about the mechanics of that particular airline.
Speaking of mechanics, well, a couple of things. One, I started a new poll, and it's only got a few results right now, but we'll see what happens. And it was actually I intentionally did not put Russia and certain other countries in there as of yet, but it was maybe we'll start it as a series as well. It's the world's worst country, and it's based on conversations I've had with Sasha and others on this network and everything. And right now, as I did put France because I know Chris is not a big fan of France, but right now the leader is Mexico because I had the first four that I gave were England, Israel, France, and Mexico has got 44%. France and Israel are 22%, and England is following a distant fourth, and all of that. So
But Russia didn't get to compete.
well, I'm thinking about doing the same thing that I did with Biden. You know, wait and put Russia
All right.
towards the end and everything.
Actually, one area where Russia can compete with Mexico is that Russian rapists are probably just more happen to be more dangerous than Mexican rapists.
But speaking of competing, you know, there's another world leader that apparently has come up with a very great strategy, and I'd love to hear y'all thoughts about this because you know everybody's well, not everybody's, but a lot of people's dream is to live in a rich house, a penthouse, or something like that. And apparently, Kim Jong Un keeps building outwardly glamorous high-rise apartments building in the capital of his country and all of that. But guess who's living in them? It's the poor people because apparently they have unreliable elevators and electricity, poor water supply, and concerns about the workmanship. So he keeps building these things, and apparently the rich don't want to live in them because the poor wound up living in them because the lifts aren't working properly. They can't pump up water due to the low pressure. And there's even cases where some of these people are living on these very what seems to be wonderful looking buildings on the outside, but they've got all kinds of problems. So Kim Jong, the president there has come up with a wonderful solution for poverty, which is build fancy buildings and then stick the poor people in them. Nick, what are your thoughts about this guy that apparently even Mr. Trump would sometimes have conversations with and all of that? So apparently this is his new strategy, and he keeps building these wonderful buildings that have glitches in them of all sorts.
Well, the thing is, I found out we are followed. We have a lot of viewers in South Korea.
Uh-huh.
We don't have any viewers in North Korea. So I don't really care that much about North Korea because no one watches our show in North Korea. And they're kind of an isolated country. We do have viewers in Russia, though, which is really weird. I'm going like, I don't know why we're getting viewers in Russia, but we can't get viewers in North Korea. But
well,
again,
it's probably not helping that they got crazy things going on because apparently one person lived on the third floor of a 13-story building that lacked an elevator, while a friend lived on the 28th floor of a 40-story building that and never used an elevator because it was not working. It's a lot of steps going back and forth.
Well, I mean, you can see the failure of the North Koreans. All you do is look at North Korea and South Korea. South Korea's flourished under their economy and their leadership, and North Korea has basically failed. I mean, what can I say? It's struggling. And a lot of it has to do with leadership. And see, I think that's the problem that I have with this guy Vlad and Putin in his Putin circle. It seems to me what they did, Sasha, and there's been documentaries on this. What he seemed to have done is once he took over from Boris Yeltsin, which Boris said was his biggest mistake, was bringing this clown along. The first thing he did, he started creating, he poisoned people, he blew up places, he basically tortured his enemies and became the head of the Russian state with no opposition, because anybody that came close to me made sure he used the old KGB poison and or assassinated them. So what happens? It seems to me that your friend Vlad, the Impaler, is who he is. He's kind of a two-faced sociopath. He'll talk to you straight in the eye, saying, "I'm not going to invade," and then he does it. You know. So
See, the problem is, Nick, the average people in the West, including the United States of America, they don't really need Russia. They don't need Putin as well.
that's right.
Those people like Trump, they need Putin to put new real estate project here and there, to extract all kind of favors and delivering him whatever he needs, and saying that he trusts Putin more than his own intelligence services or so on.
That's
So
right.
these people like Trump, like German used to be Chancellor Schroeder, who is now the head of this new Russian Western Europe pipeline, which is not going anywhere. I'm surprised that he's still getting paid because the project is frozen for good.
Right.
These people see Russia was extremely good. I forgot about the oil and gas, the corruption that Russia is spreading around the world. All countries, all continents, that I forgot absolutely. And now with corruption, okay, prostitution is doing well. I don't know what else, what positive thing Russia brings today. Forget about for good, about Tchaikovsky and all this stuff, they did Dostoevsky and so on. It's people were made from different material. Today's Russian genetic code has nothing to do with the people like Tchaikovsky. Don't even mention their names. They belong to history and culture of the world, not Russia. Today, they don't know even who these people are. They are all trying to swindle each other, get a little bit money, a little bit here to steal something. This is all miserable life of Russia and Russian people.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like, and I know we're getting ready to wind down because we've got about another minute or two to go.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like one of the things that we're saying is that world leadership, and definitely those that are wanting to go into world leadership, because we just mentioned a couple of them, whether that was Trump, whether that was Putin, whether that was the person from South Korea, and I'm going to mention one last one, which has to do with the United States and everything, that you need to have a little touch of crazy in order to be even in those kind of jobs and everything. And by the way, and this is the last international news that I'll bring up, the United States has approved a nearly $1 billion weapon sale to Nigeria after lawmakers have put a hold on the deal over concerns about possible human rights abuses by the Nigerian government. So they had put hold on, and there's been a lot of things going on in Nigeria and all along those lines because of everything from armed robberies and kidnappings for ransom to definitely thinly deployed security forces that were struggling to contain those armed gangs that are in Nigeria as well. So I know we're going to wrap everything up and all of that. And that was just one of the things I was going to bring in. And we're going to get on out of here. But if anybody's got any thoughts about the whole system with Nigeria, then I would love to hear your thoughts. And maybe we'll talk about this on next week as well. But yes, that is one of the things that is going on in that part of the world. And I'm sure that we need y'all all to go over to the show next door and to continue our conversation around Russia and the Ukraine and even what China is doing in that sense. So on that note, I'm going to get on out of here, bring that lovely thing that we do to start everything on and off the show. And hopefully folks will go over there and catch Sasha as well as whatever guests he's got over there talking about Russia, China, and the Ukraine. I may head over there as well. But in the meantime, hopefully everybody has a great day, a wonderful Easter if that's something that you celebrate, and all of that. And we'll be back on Monday. And I understand we'll have a guest on Monday as well. So looking forward to that conversation.